Most people imagine freedom as something loud. A slammed door. A suitcase thrown into the trunk. A woman crying in the rain while dramatic music plays behind her. Mine was quieter than that. Mine sounded like a silver spoon tapping against a crystal glass in a country club dining room, followed by my stepfather's voice saying, in front of 60 people, that I was not coming on the family trip because someone had to stay behind and keep things running. That was the phrase he used. Keep things running. Not because I was loved. Not because I was trusted. Because I was useful. My name is Nora Whitfield. I was 34 years old when I finally understood that my family had not forgotten to make room for me. They had made a decision. They preferred me in the kitchen. For 23 years, I lived inside the edges of other people's lives. I cooked the meals, booked the appointments, wrapped the gifts, soothed the arguments, washed the wine glasses, remembered the birthdays, paid the bills before the power company called, and learned which floorboards creaked so I could move through the house without waking anyone. My mother called it helping. My stepfather called it doing my part. My half-brother Miles called it lucky, because not everyone gets to live at home for free. My younger sister Sienna never called it anything at all. She simply left her laundry outside my bedroom door like offerings to a maid she had never hired. The house sat on Birch Lane, 3 miles outside Providence, Rhode Island. It was a white colonial with blue shutters, a wraparound porch, and a garden my grandfather had planted before my mother was even married. Granddad Arthur used to say that a house remembered who loved it. If that was true, then Ashford House remembered me best. I knew where the pipes knocked in winter. I knew how to open the pantry door without pulling the handle loose. I knew the oven ran 15 degrees cold, the upstairs bathroom window stuck in August, and the old maple tree by the drive dropped branches whenever the wind came in from the east. I also knew that none of them knew any of that, because they never had to. They had me. My stepfather, Graham Whitfield, married my mother when I was 11. He arrived with polished shoes, a leather briefcase, and a voice that could make an apology sound like an accusation. He owned 2 used car lots and talked about them as if he had built an empire instead of a pair of asphalt rectangles with balloons tied to the fences. He liked control. He liked straight hedges, clean counters, quiet women, and children who thanked him for things they did not ask for. He never hit me. That would have been too obvious. Graham was the sort of man who could erase you while making everyone else believe you had simply stepped out of frame. At dinner he would say, "Tell her to bring more bread. Her. Not Nora. Not my stepdaughter. Not even Evelyn's girl. Just her." My mother, Evelyn, always heard it. Her eyes would flicker. Her fingers would tighten around her glass. Then she would smile at the guests and say nothing. That was my mother's talent. Silence, dressed up as peace. "Nora, darling," she would whisper later, while I rinsed dishes at midnight, "you know Graham doesn't mean it like that, but he did." That was the thing. He always meant it exactly like that. Miles was Graham's son from his first marriage, 2 years younger than me and somehow permanently exhausted by responsibilities he never actually carried. He had a wife named Claire, 3 children, and the deep belief that fatherhood meant appearing in photographs while someone else packed snacks. His texts were not requests. Dropping the kids at 9. "Can you pick up Lily from ballet? Dad says you'll handle Thanksgiving sides. Claire needs help with the baby shower seating chart." There was never a please. Sienna, my mother and Graham's only child together, was 25, beautiful, charming, and trained from birth to believe that the world softened itself for people like her. She worked in creative branding, which seemed to mean taking pictures of coffee, complaining about burnout, and asking me whether I could steam her blouses because she was literally drowning. I was not drowning. I was underwater. There is a difference. The week of my mother and Graham's 30th wedding anniversary began with me standing barefoot in the laundry room at 5:40 inches the morning, ironing Graham's dress shirts while Miles's youngest screamed upstairs because someone had given him the wrong cereal bowl. By 7, I had packed 3 school lunches, thawed chicken for dinner, found my mother's blood pressure medication in the pocket of her gardening coat, called the florist to confirm the anniversary centerpieces, paid the gas bill online, and texted Sienna a reminder that her hair appointment was at noon, not 1. She replied with a heart emoji. That was her thank you. My mother found me in the kitchen later, standing over a pot of soup while making notes for the anniversary dinner. "Nora, darling," she said, in that soft voice she used whenever she needed something, "Graham wants this party to be special." I looked around the kitchen. There were grocery bags on the floor, toast crumbs on the counter, a sticky handprint on the fridge, and a dog bowl someone had stepped in and left upside down near the sink. Of course, I said. Because that was what I said. Of course. The dinner would be at the Elms, a private country club Graham joined 15 years earlier so he could say he belonged somewhere exclusive. 60 guests. 3 courses. Live piano. White roses for my mother. Navy table linens because Graham said black looked too funeral. For 3 weeks, I became the event planner nobody paid. I designed the invitations. I chased RSVPs. I arranged the seating chart. I handled the menu tasting alone because my mother had a migraine and Graham had a meeting. I ordered the cake, booked the pianist, coordinated the photographer, steamed Sienna's dress, found cufflinks for Graham, and convinced Miles that cargo pants were not appropriate for a formal dinner. Nobody asked what I was wearing. For the first time in 4 years, I bought myself something new. An emerald green dress with long sleeves and a waist that made me look less like someone who survived on leftovers and more like a woman who still belonged to herself. I stood in front of the mirror in the guest bathroom because the lighting in my room was terrible. My bedroom was the converted office over the garage. It was cold in winter, hot in summer, and far enough from the main house that everyone could pretend I had privacy while still calling my name whenever the dishwasher beeped. The dress fit beautifully. For one dangerous moment, I let myself hope. Hope is embarrassing when you look back on it. But in the moment, it feels like sunlight. The Elms looked perfect that night. Of course it did. I had made it perfect. The roses were fresh. The candles were even. The place cards were arranged alphabetically by table number. The pianist played softly near the windows. The champagne was cold. The cake stood beneath a spotlight. 3 tiers of ivory buttercream with sugared petals cascading down one side. Guests arrived smiling. "Nora, you've outdone yourself, Mrs." Langford from next door said, squeezing my arm. I laughed lightly, the way women laugh when they have been trained not to show how tired they are. My mother looked lovely in silver. Graham looked pleased with himself in a black suit and a tie I had pressed that morning. Sienna floated between tables, accepting compliments as if she had personally invented elegance. Miles stood near the bar telling a story too loudly while Claire chased their toddler away from the cake. At 8:30, Graham stood. He tapped his glass with the back of a knife. The room quieted. My mother tilted her face up toward him, already smiling. 30 years, Graham began, spreading his hands. 30 years with the most patient woman in New England. People laughed. I did not. He went on about marriage, loyalty, sacrifice, and family. He thanked Miles for carrying on the Whitfield name. He thanked Sienna for being the light of this house. He thanked Claire for giving him grandchildren. He thanked his business partners, his golf friends, his pastor, the country club staff, and the pianist. Then he sat down. I was standing near table 4 with an extra shawl for Aunt Marion, because my mother had texted me 5 minutes earlier to bring it from the coat room. Nobody said my name. Not one person. The strange thing was, I could have survived that. I had survived worse. But then dessert came. And Graham stood again. "I have one more surprise," he announced. Sienna gasped theatrically, already knowing. Miles grinned. My mother looked down at her plate. That should have warned me. Graham lifted his champagne glass. "Next Saturday, the whole family is flying to Italy. 2 weeks in Tuscany. A villa, private chef, wine country, the works." The room burst into applause. Sienna shrieked. Miles slapped Graham on the back. Claire looked stunned and genuinely happy for the first time all evening. My heart did something foolish. It lifted. Italy. I had never been to Europe. I had never been anywhere that required a passport. I had renewed mine twice in 10 years because my mother always said, "One day, darling," and I had believed her. I stepped closer to the table. "What time is the flight?" I asked. It was such a normal question. So small. The applause faded unevenly. Graham turned toward me. He smiled. Not kindly. "Nora," he said, as if explaining something to a child, "there isn't a ticket for you." The room became very still. A fork touched a plate somewhere near the back. He continued. "Someone has to stay behind. The house, the dogs, Miles's children, the deliveries. You know how these things go. You're better at keeping everything running anyway." My mother closed her eyes. Miles looked into his drink. Sienna glanced at me, then quickly away. 60 people heard him. 60 people watched me stand in the emerald dress I had bought with money saved from grocery coupons, holding Aunt Marian's shawl in my hands like a servant in a period drama. Something inside me went quiet. Not numb. Clear. I placed the shawl on the back of Aunt Marian's chair. Then I walked to Graham's table. My heels made small, sharp sounds against the polished floor. "Thank you," I said. Graham blinked. "For what?" "For finally saying plainly what this family has spent 23 years arranging politely," my mother whispered. "Nora, please." I turned to her. For the first time, I did not soften my voice. "No, Mom. Not tonight." Then I looked back at Graham. "You don't need me to keep things running anymore." He gave a short laugh. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I smiled. That seemed to frighten him more than tears would have. "I'm being unavailable." And then I walked out before dessert was served. The air outside was cold enough to hurt. I stood beneath the portico while the valet brought my car around. Behind me, through tall windows, the party continued in uneasy fragments. People moved carefully. My mother sat very still. Graham remained standing, his face hard, one hand gripping the back of his chair. My phone buzzed before I even reached the driveway. "Mom." "Sienna?" "Mom again." "Miles." Then a text from Miles. "So, are you still watching the kids next week or not?" I stared at it for a long moment. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was finished. I drove home in the emerald dress. I packed in the emerald dress. By dawn, the emerald dress was folded on top of one suitcase, and everything I owned that mattered fit beneath it. Clothes. My grandmother's recipe tin. 3 framed photographs of Granddad Arthur. A box of old postcards. My savings envelope. A silver fountain pen he had given me when I graduated high school. A letter I had never been brave enough to open. I found the letter while taking down the recipe tin from the top shelf of my closet. It slipped from between 2 old cookbooks and fell at my feet, yellowed and sealed. "For Nora, when the house gets too heavy." Granddad Arthur's handwriting. My knees nearly gave. He had been dead for 6 years. The last thing he said to me in the hospital was, "Look after your mother, love. She's softer than she knows." So I had. I looked after her. I looked after all of them. And all the while, he had left me a letter for the day I realized a promise could become a cage. I did not open it yet. Some things deserve daylight. At 5:20 inches the morning, I walked through Ashford House one last time. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old coffee. The chairs were tucked in. The counters were wiped. The dishwasher was loaded because I had loaded it before leaving for the party, thinking I would come home tired but happy. I left a note beside the coffee maker. The dogs eat at 7 and 5. Lily has ballet on Wednesday. The plumber's number is taped inside the pantry door. The oven runs cold. The house keys are on the counter. I paused. Then I added one more line. I am not the system anymore. Nora. I placed my key beside the note. It was brass, worn smooth from years of use. For a moment, I remembered Granddad Arthur handing it to me when I was 16. "In case anyone forgets, this is your home too," he had said. I had not understood then that homes could forget on purpose. I stepped onto the porch. The porch light was off. It was always off when I came home late, unless I turned it on myself. I looked once at the blue shutters, the maple tree, the upstairs windows, the garden sleeping under frost. Then I got in my car and drove north. I did not have a plan. I had $2,800, half a tank of gas, one suitcase, and the name of a town my grandfather had once circled on a map. Briarport, Maine. He had taken me there when I was 9. I remembered a harbor full of white boats, a bakery with cinnamon buns the size of my hand, and Granddad standing at the end of a pier saying, "If I ever disappear, look for me where the water is cold and honest." The drive took 4 hours. For the first hour, guilt sat in the passenger seat. By the second, it had gone quiet. By the third, it had slipped out somewhere between a gas station and a stretch of pine forest. By the time I smelled the ocean, there was only silence. And my own breathing. Briarport looked smaller than I remembered. A main street sloping toward the harbor. Brick storefronts. A post office with peeling paint. Lobster traps stacked near the pier. A bookstore with a crooked sign. A cafe called the Blue Kettle, where steam fogged the windows and someone had taped a handwritten notice to the door. Help wanted. Mornings. Ask for May. I stood outside for almost 5 minutes. Then I went in. The woman behind the counter was in her late 60s, with white hair cut to her chin and eyes sharp enough to open envelopes. She looked at my suitcase, then at my dress coat, then at my face. "Running from a man or a family?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She nodded as if I had answered. "Family, then." Her name was May Sullivan. She owned the cafe, the apartment above it, and apparently the sort of emotional intelligence that made lying pointless. "The room upstairs is empty," she said. "Small. Clean. Window faces the harbor. Rent by the week. Breakfast included if you work the morning rush." "I can work," I said quickly. May looked me over. "I can see that, sweetheart. The question is whether you know how to rest." I did not. But Briarport would teach me. The first week, I woke at 5 every morning in a panic, convinced I had forgotten something. Medication. Lunches. Appointments. Laundry. Bills. Children. Dogs. A woman cannot spend half her life being an alarm clock and then suddenly sleep peacefully. May never asked for my story. She handed me coffee, showed me where the mugs were, corrected the way I wiped tables, and paid me in cash at the end of each shift. Not gratitude. Money. It felt almost indecent. After the breakfast rush, I walked the harbor with Granddad's fountain pen and a notebook I bought from the bookstore. At first, I wrote lists because lists were the language my brain trusted. Find laundry. Buy toothpaste. Call bank. Check savings. Do not answer Graham. Then, slowly, the lists became sentences. The water is gray today. May hums when she needs dough. A man with a yellow raincoat feeds the gulls every morning and pretends not to. I have gone 3 days without being called useful. On the 4th day, I opened Granddad's letter. I sat on the narrow bed above the blue kettle, with the harbor wind rattling the window. "Nora, my brave girl, if you are reading this, then the house has become too heavy, and I am sorry. I asked you to look after your mother because I was afraid. Afraid of leaving her. Afraid of Graham. Afraid that without you, everything would fall apart. That was my fear, not your duty. A family that requires one person to disappear in order to stay together is not a family. It is a room with bad foundations. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to want. You are allowed to build a life that does not need permission from people who only notice you when dinner is late. I loved the house, yes. But I loved you more than any wall I ever painted. Go where you can breathe. Granddad." I cried so hard that May knocked on the door and asked if I was injured. "Yes," I said. She waited. But not freshly. She came in with tea anyway. Back at Ashford House, things began collapsing in small, ordinary ways. The dogs were fed breakfast at noon on the first day because Graham did not know where the food was kept. Miles dropped the children off on Saturday and found the house locked, the curtains drawn, and nobody answering the door. Sienna missed a client meeting because no one reminded her that her car inspection had expired, and she was pulled over on the way. My mother called 17 times. I listened to none of the voicemails. Claire, Miles's wife, called once. I answered. There was a baby crying in the background. "Nora," she said, and then stopped. I waited. "I'm sorry," she said finally. That surprised me. "For what?" "For knowing," she said. "For seeing it and still letting you make my life easier." I sat down on the edge of the bed. That was the first honest apology I had received from anyone in that house. "Thank you," I said. "I told Miles I'm not doing Italy," she added. "Not with 3 kids and no Nora." I laughed before I could stop myself. Claire laughed too, but hers broke in the middle. "I don't know how you did it," she said. "I didn't either," I said. "I just kept doing it. Italy was a disaster." I learned that from Aunt Marion, who had watched the anniversary dinner humiliation from table 6, and called me 2 weeks later with the delicate fury of a woman who had been raised to mind her manners, and had recently decided against it. They missed their connection in Boston, she told me. Graham blamed Miles. Miles blamed Sienna. Sienna cried because her luggage went to Madrid. Your mother forgot her medication. The villa had no grocery delivery because somebody never confirmed it. Somebody. That somebody had always been me. They lasted 6 days of a 14-day trip. Graham came home early. Not because he missed me. Because the life he had built stopped working when the invisible part refused to turn. 3 weeks after I left, he called from a number I did not recognize. I answered because I was expecting a call from the bookstore about a part-time inventory job. Nora. His voice made my whole body remember being small. I stepped outside the blue kettle. The harbor smelled like salt and diesel. A gull screamed overhead like it had strong opinions. Graham, this nonsense has gone on long enough. There he was. No apology. No concern. Just command. Your mother is beside herself, he said. The house is in chaos. Miles is overwhelmed. Sienna is barely functioning. I watched a lobster boat drift toward the dock. They're adults. That is not the point. It is exactly the point. His breath sharpened. You are punishing this family over one unfortunate comment. No, I said. I am accepting the job description you gave me. I'm not family. I'm the person who keeps things running. And I quit. Silence. Then, colder. You have become very ungrateful. I smiled. It felt strange on my face. No, Graham. I have become very unavailable. I hung up. My hands shook for 10 minutes afterward. But I did not call back. In November, Graham tried to sell the house. That was when the truth surfaced. Ashford House had never belonged to him. Granddad Arthur had left it to my mother, but with one condition buried in the deed. The property could not be sold unless my mother signed in the presence of an independent solicitor, confirming she was not under pressure from her spouse. Granddad had known Graham better than any of us wanted to admit. Graham needed the sale because his car lots were failing. He had debts, loans, bad investments, and a talent for blaming the economy for decisions he made himself. He had already promised Miles a managerial position after restructuring. He had promised Sienna money to launch her branding studio. He had promised himself a clean exit. The plan required my mother's signature. For 23 years, Evelyn Whitfield had signed whatever Graham placed in front of her. This time, she did not. Aunt Marion told me the scene afterward. My mother stood in the kitchen, holding the pen. Graham stood across from her, jaw tight. Miles hovered near the pantry. Sienna sat at the table, pale and quiet. Graham said, "Evelyn, be reasonable. This house is too much for you." And my mother, in the kitchen I had cleaned for most of my life, said, "No." It was too much for Nora. No one spoke. Then she put the pen down. It was not redemption. It did not erase anything. But somewhere inside me, a knot loosened. My mother came to Briarport in December. I saw her through the cafe window before she saw me. She stood on the sidewalk in a camel coat, hair pinned neatly, one hand gripping her handbag like it might run away. She looked older than she had at the anniversary dinner. Not because months had passed, but because denial had. May glanced at me. "Want me to throw her out?" she asked. I almost smiled. "No. But stay close. Always do." My mother and I walked to the harbor. The sky was low and white. The water slapped against the pilings. Neither of us spoke until we reached the end of the pier. "I don't know how to apologize properly," she said. That was the first thing. Not, "I'm sorry you felt hurt." Not, "Graham meant well." Not, "Come home." Just that. I kept my hands in my coat pockets. "Then start badly," I said. "But start honestly," she nodded. "I let him make you small because it was easier than fighting him. I told myself you were strong. I told myself you didn't mind. I told myself you liked being needed." Her voice broke, but she did not perform it. There were no soft sobs. No trembling hand to the forehead. No demand that I comfort her. "I saw what was happening," she said. And I looked away. I watched the water. "That's the part I can't forget." "I know." "No," I said, turning to her. "I need you to hear me. Graham hurt me. Miles used me. Sienna ignored me. But you were my mother. You were supposed to choose me sometimes." Her face crumpled. "I know." We stood there in the cold. "I'm not coming back," I said. "I know. I won't run the house. I know. I won't be the person everyone calls when they don't want to be adults." My mother wiped her cheek. "I know. For the first time in my life, she did not ask me to make her feel better. That was the beginning of whatever we might become. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way people like to imagine forgiveness, clean and glowing and convenient. But truth had entered the room. Truth changes the air. By spring, I had 2 jobs, 1 room, and a life that fit me better than the house ever had. I worked mornings at the Blue Kettle. Afternoons, I handled inventory for the bookstore and helped May with ordering. It turned out that organizing a household of 11 people made cafe supply chains feel almost relaxing. May started paying me to manage vendor accounts. The bookstore owner asked me to create a filing system. A local inn hired me to coordinate a wedding after their planner quit. That wedding changed everything. The bride cried when she saw the reception room. Not because something was wrong, because everything was right. "You made it feel like us," she said. I thought about all the parties I had made beautiful for people who never said my name. Then I went home and printed business cards. Nora Whitfield Harbor House events planning, coordination, private gatherings. May put one in the cafe window. By June, I had 6 bookings. By August, I had a waiting list. Sienna called in September. I nearly didn't answer, but I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I found the blue binder." I closed my eyes. The household binder. Schedules, passwords, appliance manuals, medical notes, grocery rotations, emergency contacts, birthday lists, clothing sizes for Miles's children, holiday menus, repair histories, everything. I had built an entire operating system for a family that called it love when they meant labor. "I didn't know," Sienna whispered. "You didn't ask." I know. Silence. Then, quietly, "I'm trying to learn how to ask." That was the first conversation we had that did not end with her needing something. Months later, she drove to Briarport alone. She wore jeans, no makeup, and carried her own suitcase. May gave her the narrow-eyed inspection she gave all strangers and decided not to hate her immediately, which was generous. Sienna stayed 2 nights. We walked the beach. We drank coffee. She apologized in pieces, not all at once. That made it feel more real. On the last morning, she helped me set up chairs for a small anniversary brunch I was coordinating at the inn. She carried the flower crates without being asked. A small thing. But small things had built the old life. Maybe they could build a new one too. Miles took longer. Some people do. Some people only understand the weight of what you carried when it finally lands on them. Claire left him for 6 weeks in October. Not forever, but long enough for him to learn where the children's dentist was, how to pack a lunch that included something green, and why "just tell me what to do" is not the same as helping. He sent me one text near Christmas. I was selfish. "I'm sorry." No excuse. No request. No follow-up favor. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "I hope you mean that enough to change." He wrote back, "Me too." That was all. Graham never apologized. Last I heard, one car lot closed. The other was sold to cover debt. He moved into an apartment near Cranston and told people my mother had become difficult. I almost laughed when Aunt Marion told me. Difficult. That is what some men call a woman when she stops carrying their consequences. My mother kept Ashford House. She repainted the kitchen. Not white. Sage green, the color Granddad Arthur had chosen before Graham covered it. When the painter sanded the old doorframe, 3 pencil marks appeared beneath the layers. Nora, age 6. Nora, age 8. Nora, age 10. Granddad's handwriting. My mother sent me a photograph with no caption. I saved it. For a long time, I thought the house had kept proof of me because no one else would. But now I know better. I am the proof. 1 year after the anniversary dinner, May handed me a key. It was brass, new, and attached to a small tag that said, "Front door." "I'm too old to open every morning," she said. "And you're too bossy to stay an employee forever." "I'm making you manager," I laughed. She did not. "It's a job," she said. "With a raise. Don't make it sentimental." I took the key anyway. The first key I had held since the one I left on the counter at Ashford House. That old key had ended a sentence. This one began one. That evening, I walked down to the harbor after closing. The sun was dropping behind the masts, turning the water gold. I sat on the cold boards of the pier, took Granddad's letter from my coat pocket, and read it again. "You are allowed to build a life that does not need permission." I folded it carefully. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Happy anniversary of the day you chose yourself." I looked at those words for a long time. Then I typed back, "Thank you for hearing me eventually." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then she wrote, "I wish I had heard you sooner." I believed her. That did not fix everything. But it mattered. People think leaving is the moment you walk out. It isn't. Leaving is every morning afterward when you do not go back. It is learning to drink your coffee while it is hot because no one is calling your name from another room. It is buying flowers for your own table. It is letting the phone ring. It is realizing rest does not have to be earned by exhaustion. It is standing in a room full of people and understanding that being useful is not the same as being loved. My family did not lose me at the anniversary dinner. They lost me every time they said, "Nora will handle it," and never wondered whether Nora wanted a life. The dinner only gave their neglect a microphone. And in a strange way, I am grateful. Because once someone says the truth out loud, you can stop pretending you misheard it. I still think about Ashford House sometimes. The maple tree, the blue shutters, the kitchen window facing east, the door frame with my name under the paint. But I do not miss being cold inside a beautiful house. Briarport is not grand. My room above the blue kettle is small. The radiator knocks. The stairs creak. The harbor smells like fish when the wind turns. But every morning, May leaves the porch light on. Every morning my name is on the schedule because I am paid to be there. Every morning, I unlock the door with my own key. And no one calls me useful like it is the highest compliment a woman can receive. They call me Nora. That is enough. No, that is everything.